This lesson is going to be about multiplying and dividing expressions. Our learning objectives are to combine terms without the multiplication or division sign, to apply our knowledge of indices when multiplying like terms, and finally apply our knowledge of HCF, highest common factor, when simplifying fractions. So let's begin by talking about removing the multiplication sign. So when multiplying numbers and pronumerals in algebra, we remove the multiplication sign. So now we're going to write the following without the multiplication signs. So let's begin with our first question, 4 times A times B times C. This can be rewritten as 4A, B, C. So let's put a green box around that because that is our answer. And we know that because when we have pronumerals, or a number and a pronumeral next to each other in algebra, we know there's an invisible multiplication sign. We don't have to write it in. So that's your answer for the first question. Let's now answer the second question. So 4A times 2B times 3C. Now, there's a very quick way we can answer this question, and I expect you to be able to do the quick way of doing it. But before we do that, I want to go through a slower way to really show you what I'm doing. So it's really going to be step by step so you have a clear understanding of what's going on. So I expect you to write down both of them, but later on, you'll expect to just be able to do the quick way. So let's begin with the slow way. So here we have 4A times 2B times 3C. Let me first insert in the multiplication sign. So I know that 4A is the same as 4 times A. And then I'm going to times 2B, which is the same as 2 times B. Then I'm going to times 3C, 3 times C. Having done that, let me now rearrange it so that all my numbers come first. So I'm going to go 4 times 2 times 3 times A times B times C. So all I've done is rearranged it. I've just put all my numbers to the front. Now I'm going to go 4 times 2, that's 8. And 8 times 3, that's 24. Then A times B times C, so I'm going to times A, B, C. I don't have to put the multiplication sign there. And obviously, I don't have to put the multiplication sign here as well. So my final answer is going to be 24, A, B, C. And let me put a box around that. Perfect. Now, I've just realized how unstraight this line is, and that's really annoying me. So let me actually rub this out. Let me try again. Let's see if I can put a straighter line in there. All right, that's a little bit better. All right, so that's the slow way of doing it. Is there a quicker way of doing it? And there absolutely is. What if, instead of putting in my multiplication signs and rearranging, what if I just first dealt with my coefficients? So I've just highlighted them there. Here we have 4, 2, and 3, and let me multiply them all together. So 4 times 2 is 8, times 3 is 24. And then let me deal with my pronumerals, A, B, and C, and let me multiply those together. Well, that's going to be A times B times C, which is just going to be A, B, C. And as you can see, I get to my same answer as I did before. Now, going forwards, I would expect you to use this method right here of simply looking at your coefficients, looking at your pronumerals, and quickly getting the answer. But it's important you understand why this is working, and that's why I've given you this longer explanation here. And remember, you should be writing all this down in your notes. Let's now answer our last question, 3 times 4W. Again, I could do this the slow way and going, well, 3 times 4 times W. So I've inserted in that multiplication sign there because I know it's invisible right there. Then I can go 3 times 4 is 12. And then I have this W, so it's going to be that. That will be my answer. But I would expect you to be able to do it the quicker way of just going 3 times 4 is 12. And then I've got this W as well, so 12W. Now it's your turn to do some questions, so I want you to write the following without multiplication signs. So I want you to pause the video and see if you can get these correct. All right, so how did you go with these? Let me quickly provide you with the answers. So for this one, you should have written down 5, D, E, F. For this one, you should have written down 3 times 2 is 6. Then I have A, C as well. And for this last one, you should have gone 3 times 5 is 15, times 2 is 30, 30. Then X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z. So those should have been your 3 answers. Let's now move on and talk about using powers. Now, I've used the word powers here, but remember, there are different words. We could have said exponents, exponents. I could have also said indices. So these are all different words for the same thing. So here we have write the following without multiplication signs. So here we have 7 times 7 times 7 times 7. We've seen this before. We want to write this in our index form. So that means without these multiplication signs. So we know it's going to have the base of 7. And because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to put a 4 up here. So it's 7 to the power of 4. We've done this a lot in our previous topics. So now I am dealing with pronumerals. Now I have a times a times a times a. And I'm going to approach it in the exact same way I did this. I'm going to have a as my base. And because I have 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, I'm going to put it to the power of 4. So as you can see here, I'm using my powers to write these expressions down without multiplication signs. Let's now answer this question. So 4a times 2a times 3b times 3b squared. So let me again answer it with a really slow method. So I want to write this down so you have a clear understanding of what's going on. So first I'm going to insert in my multiplication signs. So we have 4a, which is the same as 4 times a. Then we're timesing that by 2a, which is the same as 2 times a. Then we have 3b, which is 3 times b, and then we have 3b squared, which is the same as 3 times. Now this b squared, because we know this, we know that a to the power of 4 is a times a times a times a. So b to the power of 2, that's going to be b times b. So I've really expanded out what has been written here. All right, so let us now put first all my numbers. So here we have 4, we have 2, we have 3, then we have 3 again. So let me put them all next to each other at the front, because we know that my number always comes first. So 4 times 2 times 3 times 3. Then we have my a's. Let me put all my a's next to each other. Times a times a. Then let me put all my b's next to each other. So I have 1, 2, 3 b's times b times b times b. Let me now evaluate what we have here. So I have 4 times 2, I know that's 8. 8 times 3, that's 24. And 24 times 3, that is 72. Then I have a times a. Now I know that I can write that as a to the power of 2. Then I have b times b times b. And I know I can write that as b to the power of 3, because there's 3 b's here. Now remember, I don't need these multiplication signs, which means my final answer is going to be 72, a to the power of 2, b to the power of 3. So I'm going to get my green, and I'm going to put a green box around that. That's my final answer right there. Now that's the slow way to answer this question. Going forwards, I would expect you to be able to answer this in a more efficient way. The only reason why I write it down like this is so we all understand what's going on. But if we were to come here and look at my coefficients, so I have 4, I have 2, I have 3, and I have 3. I could times them all together. So 4 times 2 is 8, times 3 is 24, times 3 is 72. Then I could come and look at all my pronumerals. So I have a and a. And I know that a times a is a to the power of 2. And then I have b and b squared. And I know if I combine those together, what I'm going to get is b, whoops, let me change that, b to the power of 3. And as you can see here, I got the same answer, but it's just far more efficient to answer it in that way. So hopefully you can see that this is the way you should be approaching things. And let me just reiterate a point that we always put our number before our pronumerals. So always make sure you do that. Okay. I now want you to have a go at this, so I want you to pause the video and see if you can answer these questions. Let's now quickly go through these answers. So we need to write the following without multiplication signs. So let's go 5 times 5, well that's 25. And then I have 1, 2, 3 y's, so I could write that as y to the power of 3. So that is the answer to your first question. Let's now answer our next one, 3x times 5z times 2z. Well, the first thing I would do is multiply all my coefficients together. So 3 times 5, that's 15, times 2 is 30. Then I'll go, I have an x. I don't have any other x's, so let me put an x there. Then I have 2 z's here. I have this z and I have this z. So I know I can write that as z to the power of 2. So that would be your answer to the second question. Let me put a green box around that. Let's now answer the third question, 2a squared times 5a. Well, first I'm going to deal with my coefficients, 2 and 5. I know that 2 times 5 is 10. And then let me deal with my pronumerals. So here I have a to the power of 2 and then a. And I know a better way to write that is a to the power of 3. because I have two a's here and I have one a here, so I have three a's altogether, which means I have a to the power of 3. So hopefully you got all of those correct. Let's now move on and talk about removing the division sign. So when we divide numbers and pronumerals in algebra, we remove the division sign. So we're going to write the following without division signs. So first we have 2 divided by x. Now in algebra, the way we like to represent that is 2 over x. So we're using fractions. Over here we have 3x plus 1 divided by 5. We would write this as 3x plus 1 over 5. So this is expressing the same information, but this is how we like to write it in algebra, without that division sign. Then over here we have 2 divided by 7x minus 1, so that means it's going to be 2 over 7x minus 1. So both of these are communicating the same idea, 2 divided by 7x minus 1. This 2 is 2 divided by 7x minus 1. So hopefully you get all that down in your notes. Now it's your turn. I want you to remove the division signs in these questions, so pause the video and give it a go. Let me quickly go through the answers for you now. So for the first one, you should have written 3x plus 2 divided by 2x plus 1. For the next one, it's just going to be 2 over 5. And for our third one, a better way to write this, you should have gotten rid of the multiplication signs as well. We could have gone 4e over 5f. Perfect. So hopefully you got all those answers. Let's now move on and talk about simplifying fractions. So when dividing algebraic terms as fractions, we must simplify the numbers and the pronumerals. We do this using the highest common factor. So here we have 4 over 6. Now it says that we need to use my highest common factor to simplify this. So let's quickly remind ourselves of the highest common factor. So the highest common factor. So if I was to do it for 4, my highest common factor of 4, let's just list out all the factors of 4. So it's going to be 1, 2, and 4. Let's now list out all the factors of 6. So all the factors of 6 are going to be 1, 2, 3, and 6. Therefore, my highest common factor, which is the biggest number that they both share, is obviously going to be 2. Therefore, if I want to simplify this using my highest common factor, what I'm going to do is divide my numerator by 2, so that highest common factor, and then divide my denominator by 2. So now I can give this an answer. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So that right there would be your answer. Now I want to take a step back and really think of what we're doing here, using our highest common factor knowledge. So I could write this 4 here. I could rewrite this whole fraction, so I could rewrite the 4 as 2 times 2. And I could rewrite the 6 as 3 times 2. So 4 over 6, that's the same thing as 2 times 2 over 3 times 2. I've simply rewritten this 4 and this 6 as the multiplication of its factors. So you can even see those factors, the 2 and the 2, 2 and the 2 are right there. Having done that, I now can simplify by cancelling out my factors which are shared by both the numerator and the denominator. So as you can see, I have a 2 here and I have a 2 here. So they cancel out with each other. And therefore, what I'm left behind with is this 2 and this 3. So the answer is going to be 2 over 3, which is what we saw up here. So that's really what we're doing when we're simplifying fractions. Let's now move on to 2a over 3a. Now, my highest common factor of 2 and 3 is going to be 1. And if I was to divide both of these by 1, obviously nothing's going to change. I'm still going to wind up with 2 and 3. So that isn't going to help. So my numbers here are actually in the simplest form possible. But I can still simplify this because I have these pronumerals right here, this a and this a, and I can do something with them to make this a simpler expression. So if I have 2a, I could insert back in my multiplication sign. And for 3a, that's going to be 3 times a. Now, hopefully you can see that I have an a in my numerator and I have an a in my denominator. And just like I cancel out these 2's, I can cancel out these a's, which means I'm going to be left with just 2 and 3. 2 and 3. Now, I didn't have to write this out explicitly. I did that just to show you what's going on. But if I was to rewrite this 2a over 3a, hopefully what you'd be able to do is simply go, well, there's an a, therefore my answer is going to be 2 over 3. So that's really how I would expect you to answer those questions. You wouldn't be expected to write back in those multiplication signs. I'm just doing that to really show you what's going on. Let's now answer our last one, which is 5b squared over 10b. Now I could find my highest common factor of 5 and 10. So my factors of 5 are 1 and 5. It's a prime number, so it only has 2. And my factors of 10 are going to be 1, 2, 5, and 10. And as you can see, my biggest number that they both share, or the highest number that they both share, will be 5. So that means what I would be expected to do is to divide this by 5, and then divide this by 5. So dividing my numerator and denominator by 5. And that means I'm going to wind up with 5 divided by 5 is 1. So that's going to leave me with 1b squared. And on the bottom, I'm going to have 10b divided by 5, which is going to leave me with 2b. Now, obviously, hopefully you all know that when 1 is my coefficient, I actually don't write it in. I just leave it as b squared. Now, once I'm here, I need to do something about these b's. These can be simplified further down, and hopefully you realize that I could just go, hey, this b down here is going to cancel out with one of them that are up here. So my final answer is going to be b over 2. Now, I really want to spell this out a bit more, so let me really break it down for you, and I'm just going to do the whole question again, but in a different way, and that will hopefully help us understand what's going on. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put in my multiplication signs. So 5b squared, that's the same as 5 times b times b, because b to the power of 2 means I have 2 b's. Then I'm going to go over 10b. Now I'm going to write this 10 as my factors. I know that my highest common factor is 5, so I'm going to write it as 2 times 5. And then I have this b here, so that means I'm going to times it by b. Now, what I'm going to do is do some cancelling out. So whenever I have the same value in my numerator and in my denominator, is going to be cancelled. So here I have a 5, and I have a 5 down here as well. Here I have a b, and I have a b down here as well. So that means I'm left with b and 2. So that means my answer is going to be b over 2. And as you can see, that is what we have here, and that is what we found up here as well. So those are your answers, b over 2. Hopefully that was helpful, and make sure you're getting down all these notes. Now, before I get you to do some questions on your own, I just want to further explore this idea of dividing your numerator and denominator by the highest common factor. So here we have 12 over 18, and we want to simplify it. So I could find my highest common factor. So my highest common factor, I'm going to list out my factors of 12, which will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. And my factors of 18 will be 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, and 18. So therefore my highest common factor, well, I have a 6 here, I have another 6 here, they're my highest factors. So now I can divide my top by 6, my bottom by 6. 12 divided by 6 is 2, and 18 divided by 6 is 3. Now, this is the best way for you to answer it, by dividing your top and your bottom by the highest common factor. But something I see a lot of students doing, which is not incorrect, but it still gets you the correct answer, I'm going to show you now. So if I have 12 over 18, what I see some people doing is going, all right, I know that these are both divisible by 2. So I'm going to divide this by 2, and I'm going to divide this by 2. And that is going to give me the answer of 12 divided by 2 is 6, and 18 divided by 2 is 9. Well, I can still simplify this. I know that I can divide 6 by 3, and I can divide 9 by 3. And that's going to give me the answer of 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. And as you can see, I've gotten the same answer, 2 over 3, 2 over 3. So this way it works. You're doing it in multiple steps. It is not as efficient as doing your highest common factor. So I would encourage you to do your highest common factor when you're simplifying it. But you should know that this also works, and you're going to see people do it. But I'm going to discourage you from doing it this way. It's really important that you figure out what your highest common factor is and go straight for your answer. But this is also a legitimate way that works. But again, I strongly encourage you to use this way. But it's important that you know how this comes about. And also, as you can see here, if I took the two factors that I did in each step, 2 and 3, and I times them together, I get my highest common factor, which is pretty cool. Okay, so that's just a little bit of a note I wanted to make sure you all know. The last thing we're going to do in this lesson is you're going to try out your new skills of simplifying fractions. So I would like you to answer these 2 questions. Good luck. So how did you go with this question? Let's now answer it together. And I'm going to first answer it in a very inefficient way, but hopefully you can see what's happening. So let me write this down in all its factors. So 6 could be written as 3 times 2, b to the power of 3. So that's 3 b's. So b times b times b. C to the power of 4. Well, that's 4 c's. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I'm going to divide that by, well, 3 can't be broken down. Then I have a. Then I have 5 b's. Wow. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I have 2 C's. 1, 2. Then I could cancel. So I could say, all right, I have a 3 here and I have a 3 here. They're going to go away. I don't have a 2 down here, so that 2 stays. I have a B here, 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 I have a B here. Then I have C's. I have a C here and I have a C here. I have a C here and I have a C here. And now I'm done. So now I'm like, all right, what's left standing? Well, I have a 2 and I have 2 C's. Then I have an A, then I have a B, and I have another B. So that means I'm going to be left with 2 times C times C, C times C, over A times B times B. Now that can be written as 2C to the power of 2 over A B to the power of 2. So that would be your answer. But hopefully you can see that that is a very inefficient way to answer this type of question. If you were in a test, can you imagine doing this? How much time you would waste? So is there a better way for you to do it? And there absolutely is. And that is cancelling things down right here. So I could say, well, I have a 6 over 3. So I know that 3 is going to go into that 6 twice. So that is going to go away. And instead of a 6, I'm going to be left with a 2. Now, when I see this b to the power of 3, and I see this b to the power of 5, I know that means I have 5 b's down the bottom and I have 3 b's up the top, which means that all of these are going to go away, and then 5 minus 3 is going to be 2. So it's now going to be b to the power of 2. Then I have c to the power of 4 and c to the power of 2. So I know that this is going to go away, and 4 minus 2 is going to be 2. So now I could rewrite this as 2. Then I have c squared over A and B squared. So this right here would be my answer. And as you can see, this is the same as that. So let's now answer this question in our efficient way. So I have 8 over 12. Well, I know my highest common factor is going to be 4. So I know my highest common factor of 8 and 12 is going to be 4. So that means I'm going to divide my top and bottom by 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. I then have an A in my numerator. I don't have an A in my denominator, so that stays. I have an B in my numerator, which is going to be cancelled out with the B in my denominator. So that means what I'm left with is a 2, A in my numerator, and a 3 in my denominator. And just like that, we have answered the question. Now, I could have done it my inefficient way, but hopefully you can see that this is very efficient and you get the answer very quickly. So hopefully you all got to that, and I do expect you to write down all these notes. It's important that you understand what's going on. So even though it is a bit cumbersome, I do want you to write all this down. It's going to help with your understanding. Let's now review what we've done in this lesson, which has been about multiplying and dividing expressions. Our learning objectives were combined terms without the multiplication or division sign. We did lots of examples of that. Next, to apply our knowledge of indices when multiplying alike terms. Hopefully you all feel comfortable with that. And finally, apply our knowledge of highest common factor when simplifying fractions. And that's the very last thing we just did. So hopefully you feel comfortable with all of these and were able to give them ticks. Please now complete your homework for this topic. Good luck.